Thank you, and thank the Minister for being here, and again to warmly welcome Dan Brennan and his family and friends and representatives of the farm organisation. So there are some facts in dispute, but this is what we know for a fact. The Brennan family ran a very successful farm that was considered to be top-notch by anybody who had ever seen it. And then problems began to emerge, and they began to emerge as in consequence or in correlation to activities taking place on a nearby factory. Animals got sick, milk yield dramatically reduced, biodiversity was destroyed, plant life was wiped out. And as the output of the adjoining factory intensified, the problems got intensively worse. And when the Brennan family complained, raised issues, raised concerns, they were told to varying degrees that either it was their fault, in one instance as it was described to them, or that this pertained to disease, not pollution. But we also know for a fact that when animals were taken from Dan Brennan's farms, animals that were severely underweight and severely under-yielding, when they were taken to a separate setting, that their health improved dramatically. And we know that throughout this time, when all of these issues were prevailing, that it was Dan Brennan and his family that were actually striving for answers. That is not the action of a deficient farmer. That is not the action of somebody who's responsible. That is the action of somebody who is desperately trying to find answers as to what is happening on their farm. Throughout that time, farm organisations, independent experts, academics, farm advisors, in fact, from my reading of the facts, every objective person that analysed this found that Dan Brennan was an excellent farmer. Indeed, farm leaders, as was mentioned by Deputy Cahill, and farm journalists actually stake their own credibility by actually defending Dan Brennan as a farmer and arguing for answers. The department, though, for some reason, refused essentially to accept all of those facts, and we know that all the reports and the works by various agencies, as described by the Minister, have been considered deficient by all of those people who, it must be said, the Joint Committee on Agriculture and Food and the Marine consider to be experts when evidence is being sought. And then in December 2008, we know for a fact that the brick factory closed, and then overnight, literally, farm conditions immediately began to improve, to such a point that within a relatively short point of time, the farm again became an absolute model in terms of best practice. And throughout the time since, Dan Brennan has fought like hell for the truth. And I wasn't aware for much of that time just the efforts that he had gone to and those who were advocating from him. And the first that I became aware of this case was in November 2022, when Dan Brennan and other people associated with this case came before the Joint Committee. And I have to say, I have never been as struck by evidence that was put before the committee, and I was very pleased that the committee decided to bring forward this report. So since that, we brought forward the report. Initially, the response by the department was to dismiss it entirely. In December, the month after this report was commissioned, Deputy Kathleen Function, now a member of the European Parliament, raised by way of oral question a request that these issues would be independently investigated. The Minister refused. In November 2023, there was a topical issue where Deputy Cahill brought myself and Deputy Fitzmaurice and Deputy John McGuinness together to raise questions and to call for an independent examination of all of those things, and that was refused, and it has been in subsequent topical issues since. So today, the Minister has committed to ensure that there is an independent review of all of these circumstances, and I have to say I absolutely welcome that. And my appeal to you, Minister, is don't take the goodness out of it. You've made an important step, I believe, forward today. What I would ask you to do is to sit down with Dan Brennan and the leaders of the IFA and the ICMSA and agree how that independent review will actually take place and how it will operate and function. This cannot, and this is no disrespect to any of your officials or anyone in the department, but it is clear from the evidence that we have heard that the department hasn't been up to the standard that we would expect in terms of getting answers. So my appeal to you is to do that. Sit around a table with those people and agree at terms of reference and exactly how this will be, and allow us to get to the point where we actually get to the truth. Because it just struck me when I was talking to a young person in my office in advance of this, and I was trying to explain, as you try to explain in a short period of time, the complexities of these issues. But they had retorted to me, imagine if you had a situation where a farmer was accused of actually causing widespread destruction to wildlife and plant life for a long number of years, and any time an examination came about, they said, oh no, it's not the farmer's fault at all, and then all of a sudden the farm just stopped operating and the problems solved themselves like that. We wouldn't all just be allowed to pretend that it never happened. This House would be in absolute uproar trying to get answers to it. The same should be the case, despite the fact that the factory in this instance closed down in 2008, and whatever has happened, anybody who has spent more than 30 seconds with Dan Brennan knows the pain, the hurt and the anger that any farmer will feel if they're told that they're a bad farmer or that they are somehow responsible for what happened on this particular farm. So we should be just equally as adamant that the truth must come out. And as I say, I welcome the Minister's statement, particularly the point that he has said. I think the language he has used is that he will seek an independent review, ensure that it is a truly independent review, and ensure that the terms and the operations of that review are agreed beforehand, so that we can all have confidence that at the end of the day we might finally get a step closer to the truth.